Meg, the classic tiny guy inside of a giant robot that destroys everyone. Honestly, in concept it sounded really good, and Meg, when she first came out, she was very broken. They nerfed her to the ground. Then they buffed her and she was viable in strategic zone mostly because she had a lot of HP. Then she got reworked where she could now regen and pretty much did a lot of balance changes to fix that and pretty much killed the whole mechanic of the brawler in the first place, which was that the mecha did not last forever, and now it could. Meg passed from the iconic tiny guy inside of the giant mecha to just a very boring 2 lives brawler, which it was just very broken at the time as well. So they nerfed her to oblivion, then she got some tiny buffs, and then she was broken again because she had a lot of HP, and she was also kind of a sniper counter, and she was also very good in strategic zone again. So what's the problem, and most importantly, the solution? Well, luckily for you, I have it. So the first thing it is to pretty much bring back the Old Meg. So the HP can no longer be naturally regenerated, and now you decay 88 damage per second, 1% of your HP per second, which would make you last a total of 100 seconds in the mech if no one dealt you any damage at all. On top of that, the mecha would now only have 1 ammo, and the movement speed would be decreased from normal to slow. There are so many things that honestly just feel wrong with the mecha. Number one, it is literally a second health bar, literally. You can just regen it and it feels so drastically unfair that you have 2 lives, and it is just not funny. Most of the times where Meg was not broken and was usable, it was because she had 2 lives, and this is obviously a very big problem that I will also fix, but for now bring back the old mechanic, which is how it was supposed to work. In any other game, whenever you see a character like Meg, they never can regen the health of the robot, and there is a good reason for it, and we are experiencing it right now. Obviously, with all of these nerfs, there has to be some tiny buffs. Now the reload time will be reduced from 1.1 seconds to 1 second, and on top of that, the mech HP will be increased by 10%, from 8,000 to 8,800. So this is also meant to be a little bit more into, again, making the character lots of HP, pretty slow, yet pretty devastating in terms of DPS and damage. And obviously the health decay just helps to create that character in a certain way. But even with all of these changes, Meg would still be a very big problem, because if you were able to cycle the robot, then you would still have a lot of HP and obviously be a very big threat, especially in game modes like Strategic Zone. Not to mention that with all of the nerfs, should be a very bad brawler in general. So there's still the biggest problem to take care of, which is the cyclability of the second life. If you make it too low, then she will never get it and you might just as well give up. But if it is too high, you can just eternally cycle the super and be crazy annoying to the enemy. So I came up with a solution. Each time you respawn the mecha will be respawned with less 1900 HP. So pretty much the mecha will be with less 21% HP if I'm correct, because for each mecha you respawn you get less 21 seconds to live without taking damage, of course, and this will obviously make the cycling ability not that big of a problem. Imagine this, the mecha got destroyed and you're in a certain way reusing all of those parts to resummon him. Obviously he would have less HP, and it makes perfect sense honestly. On top of that, the respawning the mecha ability, the super of Meg itself, will now have its delay doubled. So now instead of taking 1 second to resummon the mecha, now it will take 2 seconds. It should be an interruptible super, but more often than not, you either just die before being able to use it, or you never really get the super interrupted at all. So this also should make even more clear that Meg's super can and should be tried to be interrupted. While also, whenever you respawn with a mecha, you have less time. And by the way, this respawning less HP thing has a limit of 2000 HP. which it is nothing, I know that, but there should be some sort of limit to cycling your robot, and right now there just isn't. Either it is too broken or too weak, and this particular mechanic should fix all of that. Now that we pretty much fixed the biggest problem with Meg as a character, now it is time to bring some fun to the kit. And where do we do that? Well, on this super. Now that she only has one ammo, that also means less cyclability of the super overall. And this means that I will not mess with any of the charge rates, even though I am very aware that you can get one entire super with less than one ammo. That is on purpose, because now the super will have levels. Now has some sort of overcharging mechanic that most robots in other video games do tend to have. Meg can charge her super thrice, so just try not to get lost. So at baseline, so when you charge one entire super, it is the basic standard sword swipe, but it deals 400 less damage. So yes, there is a tiny nerf to the super here. When you charge 2 supers overall, the super will deal an extra 1000 damage, it will knock back enemies, and it will slow them down for 1 second. Also, the sword swipe will destroy walls. So with this level 2, you would be able to be extremely aggressive onto enemies. Remember, you only have one ammo, so you cannot just rush into people like that. You're not an assassin suddenly. Don't come with random ideas. So this is just more of as well a defensive capability tool as well, because you only got one ammo. You're just meant to provoke chaos and destruction throughout the arena. And level 3, it is another very good demonstration. When you charge 3 supers, besides all of that, you shoot a massive shockwave with 2.66 tiles of width. Imagine almost something like Gale's attack, but even a tiny bit wider, like something close to Gale's old attack if I'm correct. And this shockwave has a massive 10 tile range, so this would be considered a sniper attack. This shockwave deals 2000 damage, pushes enemies back, also slowing them down by 1 second. This shockwave also destroys walls and pierces them, so it is pretty much like a tiny weaker version of a Frank super that can go across pretty much the entire map. Another thing that I also need to mention about all of the supers. Number 1. You now can self-charge the super within 10 seconds, and yes, you can still manually charge the super. The self-charge ability, it's more to bring even more excitement to the character, and also you're meant to charge the supers, not to randomly waste them if you're close to anyone. So this is also to help you to keep those supers charging. In case you're not actually engaging in combat, you just get super. And lastly, the super unload speed was increased from 0.6 seconds to 1.3 seconds. For you to have an idea, this is exactly the same time as BB takes to unload one attack. So now you would really deliver a powerful attack. That's the point of this ability. That's the point of a super. This is a devastating attack that can pretty much melt anything that goes in the way. That is at least the idea. Finally, before moving into gadgets, star powers and other things, I also want to add one extra layer of fun. So now, if you for some reason try to not use your ammo, there will be a bar on top of you that will slowly charge. These would be like BBs. If you have all of your ammo, the bar starts charging. This bar takes only 1.5 seconds to be completely filled, and when it is, your next attack will shoot pretty much a Brock gadget rocket. But on top of everything that it offers, it will also knock enemies back. So pretty much this is again to just add to that massive destruction capability that the Meg should be able to provide, destroying the map, knocking enemies back, a lot of AoE damage as well, because the Brock's gadget rocket, it is pretty darn crazy when you think about it. And again, just bonus damage by holding your ammo. That's also where I'm trying to go, charging attacks. This is just one extra thing that I also really wanted, because her main attack, even after doubling the projectiles, it still feels pretty bland overall, so this should also make her attack interesting as much as the super. You know what else would be interesting? If you subscribe to my channel. I am right now farming a lot of content, vacations, yippee. So I would be very appreciative, I am inventing words right now, if you could subscribe to the channel. We are pretty close to hit 2,000 subscribers, and I know we can do this. So go hit that button, which is no longer red, now it's black. YouTube changes things sometimes. And let's keep going with now the gadgets and star powers. I am pretty much reworking all of that. So, first gadget. I saw your comments, and a lot of you were pretty annoyed at the fact that this gadget was just a copycat of Bibi's first gadget, but it lasts longer and heals pretty much the same in the end of the thing. So I'm completely reworking that. The new first gadget would be called Saving Batteries. For 10 seconds, all of this, the health drain stops, you get a 25% shield, and the healing reduction that you have would be reduced from 70% to 40%. But your reload time will be increased to 1.6 seconds, and your rocket delay that you have to charge the ammo would be increased to 2.1 seconds, and you're 10% slower. The main idea is, again, building a character. You suddenly realize that you have to save batteries on the robot, and by doing so you become slightly slower, slightly less offensive overall, but you can conserve all of your energies and you still become tankier. This is pretty much what the first gadget used to do, but while at the same time having something to do with the mechanic of the tiny boy inside of a tank. Pretty crazy. And the second gadget will be the opposite of that, which would be called Overdrive. For the next 5 seconds, your natural decay will get tripled, so if my math is mathing, you should be losing around 256 HP per second for the next 5 seconds. But you instantly charge 300% of your super, you get 1 ammo, and your rocket bar gets instantly filled. So pretty much if you're about to die, you can click on this gadget, very quickly use this super, and at the same time, you also can shoot 1 rocket and 1 full ammo, because you can only hold 1 ammo. Honestly, I feel like both of these gadgets would be pretty cool, not only to the character, but also pretty fun to try as well, especially the second one, and I feel like honestly this is a pretty great concept. Moving to the star powers, I'm going again to the same direction. One of them, it is a savior in a certain way from death, while the other one, it is a way much more aggressive option. So starting with the first star power, which no one uses right now, really crazy how times change things honestly. So the new first star power would be called Aggressive Reaction. When the mecha gets destroyed, it would shoot 1 cannonball to all the enemies. Yes, this is Penny's cannonball pretty much, but honestly just makes sense to me. Meg would get her reload time, her reload speed doubled, and the mecha would spawn with all of its remainings an emergency turret, which would have 4,400 HP, and it would also have a 1% HP decay per second. This turret would be pretty similar to Jesse's one, but it would have a lot of changes. To start off, it would obviously have less HP, so a lot easier to take down, not to mention that it also loses HP over time. The damage, it is higher, it is 680 per projectile, which is actually 2 projectiles of the robot when you do the math. The range, it is significantly smaller. Jesse's turret has 9 tiles of range, while this emergency turret has 7.66. Which for most brawlers, it means that you can destroy the turret in safety without receiving any damage. On top of that, the turret shoots slightly slower. Instead of having the 0.3 second delay, it has 0.35, which, trust me, it should make a very big difference. So strong attacks, but overall harder to land, and at the same time, you can destroy the turret in your own safety, which is a pretty good detail, not to mention that you have all of the other extras that the star power offers to you. Second star power, a lot of changes. To start off, the damage will be greatly reduced from 2,400 to 6,000. Honestly, the amount of times that I killed brawlers with the damage of the star power is actually kinda crazy when you think about it. I use this more as a last thing to kill the enemy most of the times than the knockback, which should be the whole point. So the damage will be reduced to 600 damage, and the radius of the explosion will be just slightly increased to 3 tiles from 2.67, so it will have just a tiny bit more range than, like, for example, Jean's gadget and M's gadget. But now the star power will have the next extra. Now it will also build 3 piles of trash, each one with 2200 HP. As I said earlier, the idea with these new abilities, it is to provide either a very aggressive option with the mecha or an incredibly defensive option. Probably in star power terms, I honestly would probably go with the second star power, but I could see the first star power being very helpful in, for example, strategic zone, or for example in heist as well, or gem grab. But probably the second star power would be more for football and knockout, bounty, all of those other game modes. So honestly, I feel like I made the star power choice kinda hard, but it both would feel pretty natural and pretty balanced because each one would have their own role, and that's the idea with star powers and gadgets. New mythic gear. The health decay gets cut in half, so now it will take longer for the mech to get naturally destroyed. Attention that this health decay being cut in half also applies to the emergency turrets, just as a warning. And at the same time, the respawned mecha, instead of losing 1900 HP, it only loses 1500 HP. This pretty much means that you still have one extra time where before going to the mecha you have more than 2000 HP. If you do the math, you will understand that at one point, I think that you have like an additional moment before reaching 2000 HP, where you have somewhere like, I think if I'm correct, 2800 HP, which it's not much more, but you just have more HP overall. It is a very specific mythic gear that is all focused on survivability of the whole thing, of the whole mecha, of everything. So I feel like this would be a pretty good mythic gear, and also trying to replace the usual things that you want with Meg. Obviously because of the rework, health gear would now be pretty much useless on her, but shield gear would still be pretty good with her. Honestly, I don't even know how that works. Like, I actually, now that I think about it, you would need to destroy the shield gear before actually being able to damage Meg, which would be a very interesting extra now that I think about it, but I'm getting sidetracked here. So now, this mythic gear would just help you to overall build some more survivability. These would pair very well with the aggressive options, because the defensive options are there in case you don't really need them. So probably with this mythic gear you would want the second star, actually no, the first star power, and the second gadget. Because tripling half means that you would only get 1.5, which would be very, very good. So I feel like overall a pretty solid mythic gear. And finally, the cherry on top of the fun, HYPERCHARGE. I would call this Ultra Mech. It is a very simple idea, but I feel it makes perfect sense. And just as a warning, as I usually do when I talk about hypercharges, I am not the usual type of hypercharge enjoyer. Not as much stat increases, more of abilities. That is how Clash Royale did it. It is probably the only right thing that Clash Royale did in the past like year or so. But Brawl Stars, you could be taking notes, honestly. So Ultra Mecha, when activating, number one, this hypercharge takes 1 second to activate. So before you activate it, you still need 1 second to actually pop out. So you cannot just suddenly go that. This is again to build character. Most of the robots, again, charging attacks. It's just skipping to build that character. So drain health, no longer a thing while hypercharge, just to make sure that you cannot suddenly die very fast. You also get a 25% damage increase and a 25% shield increase, but there is no speed increase because mechas are not meant to be fast, they're meant to be deadly and tanky, and these should do that. So number one, you don't lose ammo while attacking. This is obviously pretty strong. This is obviously to push everyone away out of the mecha and to just banish people out of existence as well, because you would have infinite ammo. Why I say that attacking does not waste ammo? It is because with that, you can always be stacking the rockets. So during this hypercharge, you would literally have 3 rockets, which is pretty darn good. Actually, 4 if you try to pop it out before you actually need to unload the rocket. Like, you pop the hypercharge and already prepared for battle. Your supercharge and recharge rate gets tripled. So this is obviously to help you to get that level 3 super. Like, 1 ammo can literally get you a level 3 super, which is the whole point. At the same time, for each second that you exist on mecha form, you shoot 1 cannonball at the furthest enemy. So this is to counter snipers as well with the robot, again causing maniac throughout the whole map. And at the same time, you have a buster shield on your back. Why not in your front? To not be completely broken. And at the same time, a lot of mechas have shielding abilities, and this mech is kinda lacking it. A tiny bit. So honestly, this is also another extra. This should also help you in case you get backstabbed like Lily, for example, or something like that. And this would be, again, a defensive tool for the mecha to be pretty devastating, and to make sure that the whole point of this mecha with the hypercharge, it is, yes, to being able to do 1 versus 3, but realistically speaking, most of the hypercharges already do that, so I don't think that I am making anything really broken. And lastly, all of the supers and each individual level would get a bonus as well. I did not forget about the supers. At level 1, you shoot 1 Brock Gadget rocket in the middle. At level 2, you also shoot 2 diagonal rockets. Imagine these a little bit like Clancy in a certain way. You also shoot those 2 diagonal attacks. And at level 3, now the shockwave, instead of slowing enemies down, it stuns them. And you also shoot an additional 5 rockets in a 360 degrees. So those 2 diagonal rockets would be 45 degrees, and all of the rockets would be in 45 degrees of each other rocket, forming the 360 degree X and plus shape. So you just shoot 8 rockets in every direction with the level 3 super, not to mention that the shockwave would also stun. So that's also an explanation to why you get triple the charge and recharge rate from the super. But now, such a powerful hypercharge that you might be wondering, how much supers do you need to get it? Well, you need exactly 6 supers to get this hypercharge. You might be going like, what? It is pretty weird, I know, but you gotta think for a second. You can naturally get 1 super in 10 seconds. That means that you can naturally get the hypercharge in 1 minute. That is way much more than Edgar can pull off. Obviously, you will not always be on the mecha, but still, the charge rate outside of the mecha, it is still pretty good. Like, you get 1/4 of the super with only 1 ammo, which is pretty good, and the shots are relatively easy to hit. So I would say that in terms of rate, and for what the hypercharge does, it is pretty darn reasonable, the rate. And also, I kind of forgot to mention, if you're on human form and you have the hypercharge active, if you use the super, the hypercharge duration gets resetted. So if by some reason you just activated the hypercharge, and let's just say that somehow you have your super, I am not really saying anything, you just have the super somehow, and you immediately activate it, after those 2 seconds, your hypercharge duration gets brought back to 5 seconds. So that it does not feel completely unfair if you lose the mecha, you can still get it back. It's pretty impossible, unless you're like already on human form and you activate it on purpose. I could see that being a thing. But most of the cases you want to activate the hypercharge while on the mecha. And there you go. I cannot believe that I almost spent half an hour talking about 1 brawler. But honestly, Meg just has so much potential, and I feel like she got lost in these 2 lives kinda weird brawler that is just not fun and it's broken at the same time. A lot of other brawlers fall into this category, so I would like you to say in the comments down below which other brawler that is in a similar position like Meg would you like to see me talking about, because I am all hands for it. So honestly, I feel like Meg should be this fun brawler. It is a legendary brawler, and out of every legendary brawler besides Amber, I feel like she's honestly the unfunniest to play. and I feel like Meg deserves every single of these changes. If you liked, do not forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.